do that quite quickly.
No,
Right.
of course.
Do you know what I'm
Okay,
kind of
okay,
meaning?
next episode.
Oh,
No hilarity in this episode because it's
So
proper
no
boring.
singing, no dancing.
Next week.
Okay, perfect.
So this week's going to be about PESTLE. Sometimes a pest analysis, but we've got an LE on the end of this one, so it's a PESTLE.
And whatever does that mean?
Well, let's get into that.
Let's go. Political
Uh-huh.
for the P.
Yep.
E is economical.
S, social. T, technology. I'll take
Techno.
And then what's L, Johnny?
L is legal.
Absolutely, you spot on. And E, the last E.
It's about energy. Environmental.
Environment. So political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environment.
Yeah.
So these are all external threats. These are things you cannot control in your business, but you have to be
Aware.
and alert to change. So, Wicus, political.
So I'm going to tie political and economic in, and I think for the purpose of this exercise, because we want to show you how to use it, let's just use COVID-19. It's fresh in everybody's mind.
Oh, absolutely.
We're just out of it. We're still feeling some of the impacts. But if you look at how does COVID-19 affect you, 20th of March 2020, Boris Johnson puts all of the UK into lockdown. What does that do for business and business environment? I'm going to tell you a story about political risk. Wimbledon. Wimbledon is one of the only companies that got paid out on their insurance policy because they sat around and they looked at these risks. And one of the new board members at Wimbledon came through and said, what if the government places in a national lockdown and Wimbledon can't go ahead? Now, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you think, these guys are ahead of the curve. But so they went and they searched for it. This is in 2018, 2019. They went and they searched for it. They found a policy, paid £25 million in premium, 2 years running. And when the government put them into lockdown, Wimbledon called on that policy. It paid out for 2 years. And I think, I stand to be corrected, but the number it paid out was £175 million a year. So Wimbledon could get going on. The only business that's not affected by COVID that had the foresight to take out an insurance policy because of a political action. So you need to look at what is happening in your political landscape, what rules, what regulations are being passed by the ruling party of the time.
And that's a thing, like I was never really into politics at all, ever. But it has a serious effect on
your business.
So you kind of forced, if you're not into politics, you kind of have to at least dip your toe in, keep your finger on the pulse as to what's going on.
You just need to be aware of what's happening because the politics normally leads into economics. So all of a sudden, the government puts everybody into lockdown. What happens? Nobody can go to work. How do we earn money? So interest rates drops to an all-time low. So if you have to remortgage, you're remortgaging at 1%, 1.5%. It's great. But when you come out of that, you're at 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's going to impact on your business. If you're dealing with a consumer, we're in a cost of living crisis, things like that. Yep. So what you want to try and do is you want to try and understand how this will hinder your business or how it'll help you. And you need to look at those factors. Interest rates, will they help you? Will they hinder you? If you're importing goods, is that going to help you or is it going to hinder you? The strength of the pound. What does it do to your business?
Well, you just have to look at what happened with COVID-19. I think the average of a container for the import was up to about £8,000 from, was it something simple as £500 to £800 it was originally.
Another one's leaving the EU.
Yeah.
Stick to COVID as an example, but the EU had a big change in a lot of businesses.
Big change in customs declaration, things get held up at the port, so you can't supply your clients. That's got an economic impact on your business. You can do nothing about that. That's the point of looking at these risks. And there's only 3 or 4 risks that really affect your business. Mostly political risks will only be big life-changing events like COVID-19 because you can do nothing about it. But you need to be aware of the regulations that they are passing.
Right.
You need to be sure about that.
Well, let's look at the S for social.
Yeah.
Look at for COVID-19. Now we've got hybrid working. The impact on the hybrid working as well, you look at places, city centres, shops have shut down after that because people are now hybrid working. So this has had a major shitstorm for a lot. So there's
Commercial
the pros and cons
properties.
for commercial properties, lying empty. The council's not getting enough money just from this one impact, which was huge. I don't think they realised how big an impact it would be. So you've also got, unfortunately, 2 years of generation of kids coming from school, now leaving school, with not the experience that they should have. You've now also produced, I don't know what it's statistically, but there's a lot of lazy bastards now. They've got that.
They'll have a statistic for it.
Yeah,
Well,
no, they
okay. Are you lazy?
But you make such a valid point there, because if you look at, eventually you're going to have to employ people, and 10 years ago everybody wanted to be a firefighter, a policeman, or a spark, or a joiner. Now everybody wants to be a YouTube influencer. Yep. Different mindset, different philosophy.
And that's just because you've given them 1 year to 2 years watching iPads, being around the home. It's been great for a period of time, but every change has an impact for the good and the bad. But socially, it has caused a bit of a shitstorm.
And especially if you have a business and you have people, because you go from working in an office to working remotely. How do you communicate? Mm-hmm. You lose some of your company culture. You lose some of your company values.
Well, look at it socially now. With that, you've also got a high percentage of anxiety, depressions,
mental well-being.
Mental well-being.
Yeah.
It's even now the social impact of people being able to strike a conversation. It's a lot harder now.
And it goes into, like, I was on a Zoom call during COVID with a CEO. Like, there was a group of us just seeing how we're getting on, and there's a couple of things happened with them, but they had a client who had put an order in, hadn't paid for anything yet, and COVID hit, and they'd done, it was all clothes, high-end clothes, but this client paid the full amount for the order during COVID just to make sure that this company was okay financially, which was amazing. But that loyalty between these two are, that's a relationship that's grown very quickly. But on the other side of that, a big part of their business was suits and ties.
Right.
So, there's a habit. If you're in something for 3 months, is it?
Yeah.
Once you're in something for 3 months, that's now a habit of yours. And people are now in the habit of not wearing suits and ties. So that was a real threat that was happening to them, that they had to make some adjustments to the business model and what they were doing. But yeah, so
I think this topic here, it allows people to open their eyes to one event that happened through the whole world and the impact on it, not just for yourself, but think about everybody else. Because there's a chain, not a chain of command, but there's a conveyor belt of how everybody implements each other. And just because you're okay doesn't mean everybody else is okay. Yeah. So you have to have that thought process and try and help each other out. But I mean, you've got the social.
What about the technological
stuff?
Well, Michael? That changed from Zoom. They were just talking about Zoom. Instantly, we're all in the house on Zoom calls. All the staff working from home. So how many quizzes did we go through in lockdown? Trying to just keep everybody active and just, it's just what you're saying, keeping in touch with them, making sure they're all right. Because not everybody was all right, it affected people differently. Teams, all that kind of stuff was all brought in. So that took over there. And there's been a bit of a circle on that, because I now see people want to be back in the room again rather than being on the end of a computer phone call. But it definitely shrunk the world, though, that very quickly. You suddenly now don't have to get on the flight and go down to wherever. You can just do a Zoom call. And people are now... They weren't before, but they're now very accepting of the fact that that's how we can do business.
It's made the world a very small place. So that technological risk will either help you or it'll hinder you in how you want to grow your business, or you want to do things out in the normal thing. Technological risks, you need to be aware how technology impacts you, because technology moves at a rapid pace. And I think, we did an acquisition. Well, you did an acquisition. Yeah,
we did an acquisition on the smaller letting agency. Now, what they done, they just, obviously everyone does their own thing, but they were still on paper and pen when we took this on. So we were like a rocket ship compared to where they were. And in your business, if you're falling behind with what's happening in technology, then you could be swallowed up pretty quickly. So you need to keep an eye on it's very specific to the industry as well. Not always, but there's very specific technology to your industry. So just keep your eye on that.
Absolutely.
And see where it's going.
You need to find out what's specific to yours, in your industry specific. And then there's the legal aspect, and I think the legal aspect is probably, if we're using real life example of COVID, the private rental sector, the laws the government passed.
Where do we start on that?
Rent caps, rent freezes, non-evictions.
No, we started in 2011, and literally from the first couple of months of starting, there was a change brought in where you couldn't charge tenants anything but rent and returnable deposit. So none of this fee, as I was talking in one of the episodes, in for charging for doing credit checks and stuff. Now, we never did it, so it wasn't a change for us at the time, but that has then never stopped. It's just been constant. You're now licensed as a letting agent as much as all the other stuff, and COVID brought in a whole rake of changes. So we had to very quickly adapt to all of that. So yeah, that was a definite
Game changer.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, the private rental sector has been lifted in Scotland to a very high level on a whole. Like, it's a really, really legislated industry. But you had to have moved with the times on that. So it was where we were keeping ourselves at the forefront of everything. So like the licensing was very a natural step for us. But not everybody was at that stage, and it was a massive learning curve to get to where they needed to be. And some people just didn't do it. They just packed in. They weren't willing to go through it.
And that's a risk to a business, because you spend 10, 15 years building it, and all of a sudden, through no fault of your own, it just the rug is pulled from under your feet. And then the last one, and I suppose the one that nobody talks about, is environmental. Johnny, what's your views on environmental risks?
Well, you look at the impact electric cars have had. The infrastructure they have to put in the roads for that, petrol stations, work commercial premises. If you own them, you will, through the sustainability checks, I think 2025.
Yeah.
You will have to put electric charging points. You either put in air source heat pumps, solar panels. The renewable sector is massive now, so there's good points for it. But there's also issues for employees or people that have their own businesses that have to implement changes, and it's going to cost them money.
It's like gas as well,
Gas, no gas boilers.
Yep. So that's what you
wood
do
burning stoves.
Wood burning stoves as well.
Wood burning stoves from the 1st of April. Not in any new build are you allowed a wood burning stove.
Wow.
So just things like that. If you have a business in that sector, you'd be really nervous, because you don't make these decisions.
Yeah.
But you spent 10 years building a business, creating a livelihood, no consultation. What do you do? So those are the risks that you need to look at. Specifically on that environmental risk, I can tell you, I have a client that uses a byproduct of fuel to create a certain type of resin. And when we did this exercise, there were 4 suppliers. Within 3 years, we were down to 1 supplier. And that supplier was imminently closing down. So we had to spend a small fortune in research and development, because our options were limited. We either buy a refinery, and if you're a small business, you don't have billions, it's not going to happen. Second thing is we could import them, but where do we store it? So storage is a place.
Yeah.
But we managed to find somebody that produces a alternative to it that we could use as an additive. So if we hadn't been aware of that, it would be a 50-year-old business that would shut down.
I think it's worth mentioning, though, as well, that all these threats and these things have all happened there, that there's opportunities.
Opportunities are everywhere.
Yeah, and it's making, like what we've seen in COVID, for example, was there was businesses that when the shutdown came, because certainly, things were quiet, the phones didn't ring, even though we were working from home and stuff. So the first opportunity that came along was time. We had time in our hands, and we used that time to work on our business every day, all day, for weeks. It was amazing. But I've seen businesses that thought, holiday, we don't have to do anything. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, the ones that had their head up and were looking at solutions and how to move on with their businesses, they took over, and the ones that didn't, there's a lot of them went down because they just didn't adapt quick enough.
This is basically a nice wee quote. Some people see the threats, but also the opportunities. Mm-hmm. So you can experience some of the threats and see the opportunities, and you clearly did. Through that time, I was looking at it all the time.
It's just not bearing your head.
Yeah. Right, it's for the new businesses coming through. Be aware of the next thing that could possibly come, and don't be like everyone else. Be forward planning, and just evolving constantly.
Because you're not going to see all of this, I mean, we were in a mountain in Canada when COVID hit. Came back to we're in the airport going, what's that tube wearing a mask for? What's that? There's another one. Then there's another one. Not even wearing it right. But anyway, then we came back in Italy. It was on the shutdown, and it was all kicking off. Yeah. It was a pretty much
If
over
only
now.
we stayed in Canada for another 2 weeks.
Would have been shut
I'll
down.
see you in a year.
2 years, maybe.
Aye.
But yeah, so you won't
what-
see these things coming a lot of time, but I think it's important just to be aware when
It's-
it happens, right? This is a threat that's happening. Keep the head up.
Keep
what
the head
am I
up.
going to do now?
What am I
Yeah.
going to do now?
Where am I
What
going
a-
to get relevant
that's-
information from? And where can I pivot to actually make this a...
And that's all. and
Yeah.
This is all it's designed to do is
Yeah.
to highlight threats and opportunities for you. You can do nothing about it, but it's how you're going to be respond. So if we take anything from it, look at 3 or 4 things from political to economic to social to technological to legal to environment, and they're either going to help you or they're going to hinder you. Because like you said, some businesses did really well, others folded, and it's about that.
And you've got one thing as well, which is not part of this necessarily, but you as a person, what if you fall ill? Or you've got like a key member of staff that falls ill, leaves a big hole in the business there that you can't really afford to fill. But you do, like you get key man insurance, for example, is one of the things you can look at.
Look at.
And that then they will then pay for somebody to come in of a similar level and help the business while this person's off or you're off. So you're not, because especially when you're in, if you are a lot of the business and you fall ill, what happens to the business? The chances are, you're not going to have much
You're not
business
gonna
left
have.
when you come back. So again, that's a threat there that you need to just be aware of. And what would you do in that instance?
And it's not a case of worrying about it, because
Yes.
if you look at it in both ways, you're employed or you can be employed just now. If you fall ill, you get looked after to a point, but it's maybe not enough. So that's why insurances are helpful. But when you work for yourself, you can also change that, and you can create a business by not you being in the business or you being the business.
And that comes with time.
And crisis management, again, we can teach you all about the crisis management side of things for every person that's in your business and including yourself. So, what have we got forward? to
Next
look for?
episode is the fluffy stuff. Let's call it direction of travel. Better words is mission, vision, values.
Is there a mountain in Canada involved?
Mountain in Canada, definitely. Is there a broken rib and a
we'll not
broken
talk about
collarbone involved in that story as well?
Their ribs only got broke because the person on top of them was proper heavy, yeah?
And
Yeah,
the person
yeah.
who had the broken collarbone also told me that that person was also proper heavy. So
Do you know
I'm
what
not
it was?
sure.
He pushed me over.
That must have been the speed you were going.
So that's going to be interesting stuff. We're going to
Yep.
be talking about why it's important in your business, because it's not something you think about now, but for later when you grow into it, really valuable to have it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Exactly. And would
Okay.
you like to finish on a nice quote?
Well, I think Wicus should say the quote this time because
Oh, come on, you.
So-
That was a South African accent, just to put out there.
Yeah, it wasn't a great one, but it's okay. And I know the quote.
he knows the quote.
This is your world. Shape it or somebody else will.
Love it.
Oh, I'm getting emotional.
There we go.
Yeah.
We,
Might
we,
inspire someone just to get out there.
we need to
Stuck
find
in a
out who
rut.
wrote it.
Yeah, no. Right, I promise I'll get it for the next one, right?
Excellent.
Because we need to give him credit because it's a
No,
brilliant.
it's a great, great quote.
Okay.